has now been blown away. We're looking at a select group of 5 riders there. Belocchi, 3rd last year in the Tour de France. Ulrich 2nd. Morrow 4th. They are the riders. And I think Osco Sevilla is also there for Kelme.
Well, these men are just going to sit on the tail of Jan Ulrich right now. Ulrich will set the tempo, which is comfortable for himself, but he's using an absolutely huge gear. 1 minute and 25 seconds is the deficit Lance Armstrong has on Laurent Roux right now. He is absolutely eating into the lead of the lone Frenchman. He will catch him within 5 kilometers to go to the summit, and I feel certain right now, unless anything happens to Armstrong, he's going to run out the winner at Alpe d'Huez. He'd said before the start he wanted to win here. He always comes up on time for his rendezvous.
All of the great winners of the Tour de France win at Alpe d'Huez. It is the shrine, the mecca of the race of world cycling indeed. It used to be the domain of the Dutch, but now just about everybody with a fine pair of racing legs is getting in on the act. And Armstrong can join some of the finest names in the sport if he can win here.
Only one man has ever managed to win here before and go on to win the Tour de France, and that was Fausto Coppi back in 1952. He is hoping today, Armstrong, to once again write his name into the history books. He might not have known a lot about the history of cycling before he came here to Europe, but now he certainly does, because his name is in nearly all of those books right now. The French would love this man to survive. He's been the hero of the day today. He attacked after 6 kilometers, built up a huge lead over the rest of the field. At one stage, they were 13.5 minutes in front of the pack, but he's now being hunted down by the man who wears number 1. Lance Armstrong, well, you can't come up with enough superlatives for the performance of this man. He's almost died. He's looked death in the face with that testicular cancer. He's fought his way back. He's fought his way against the pressure of the press that have really tried to assassinate him. They've followed him for 2 years since he took the win in 1999. He's shut all of that out, prepared himself for today, and he's floating up this mountain. Phil, another time check coming in, 58 seconds.
Well, this is moments ago where the leader passed through. There's an American flag there now. On the right, the Lone Star flag, and also we've got Spanish flags, German flags. They're all waving now at the American as he cuts through the crowd here. He is now 58 seconds behind being in the lead on today's stage of the Tour de France. The Ulrich group is dropping back.
You may call it the Lone Star flag of Texas. Down there, it's also known as the national flag of Texas. And I'm sure there are horns tootling in Austin as Lance Armstrong seizes the Tour de France by the neck. What must be going through the mind of this man? German champion Jan Ulrich, 97 Tour de France champion, a man who had today's stage 10 completely in the palm of his hand until the bottom of the focus of that stage. The 14-kilometer climb at 7.9% gradient up L'Alpe d'Huez. Suddenly, his chief rival, 2-time defending Tour champion Lance Armstrong, simply blew by him, looked back once over his shoulder as if to say, time to get down to business, my friend, and absolutely left him behind. And consider this man, Laurent Roux, who has been in the lead for more than 195 kilometers. But he has been told Armstrong is coming inexorably. Here's Phil and Paul.
The catch is going to happen at 6 kilometers from the finish. There is Armstrong. Look ahead. You'll see the brave, the affable Laurent Roux, but he's not going to win at Alpe d'Huez. Lance Armstrong is now. Look at the crowd here. The German flags even cheering on Armstrong. Then the Americans now as he makes his way to the catch. Feel sorry for this man. He's been simply brilliant today, and let's hope he can survive to take second on the Alpe, because that would be a considerable performance. But this is the moment that will please American fans. The bridge of 6 minutes 25 seconds to 0 has taken Lance Armstrong a little matter of just 5 miles.
Absolutely unbelievable. He's on the tail now of Laurent Roux. Maybe a word of encouragement, but not. He's concentrated. He wants to win. He wants to win at the summit of this giant of the Alps. He loves to write his name into the history books. He's won at the summit of Sestriere. He's won at the summit of Hautecamp. And right now, Laurent Roux has been literally blown away.
We have seen some sensational exhibition of strength on Alpe d'Huez. I can't recall one like this when a leader has gone past a tiring man in that manner. We've seen the escapades of Marco Pantani. He's just flown away by himself. But today, Armstrong gave them all a big start, and he's ripped them apart. And now he's free as a bird to fly to the summit and to win the most romantic stage of the Tour. He's won before stage of the Tour de France, but I think this will be his best.
This is one that he wanted. He wanted to get his name into the history books. He wants to win here at Alpe d'Huez and then go on to win the Tour. You know, this is absolutely magnificent. This is panache. This is banging the hand on the table and saying, I'm the strong man, I'm the climber, and I'll come out again and I'll win the time trial as well. He's had so many detractors in the French press over the last couple of years, but this kind of performance is panache. This is heroic. This is what the Tour de France is all about, and that's what this man's life is all about.
Well, just look at the continuing pedalling rate of him now. This is the village of Wez, and now we have 3 miles to the summit, and that's a long way to climb for a lot of tired bodies on the mountain today. This is the encampment of the French and the Dutch, by the way, and they're seeing an American go through first. And just look at the speed of those motorbikes as we're looking down on what is the chase group aiming now to pick up Laurent Roux. And I, for one, hope they don't, because he's been such a hero today. Even the Swedish flags are flying. I don't know, Swedes in the race.
Well, they're enjoying the Tour de France. 21 seconds is already the deficit of Laurent Roux on Lance Armstrong. 1:46 over Jan Ullrich, who's recovering. Again, we're going to a slightly flatter part of this very long, difficult 14-kilometer climb to Alpe d'Huez. In fact, it looks now as if the Kelme rider has popped off the back. Oscar Sevilla, he is away now. It's leaving. These are the 3 men who were 2nd, 3rd and 4th in the Tour de France previously. And at the moment, they are miles behind Lance Armstrong. The pink jersey is Joseba Belocchi. The blue jersey is the man who won the opening prologue, Christophe Moreau. And the man on the front, who is now actually suffering like a dog, is Jan Ullrich, the German.
Well, this is amazing. There's every reason that we could see the order of finish at the top of Alpe d'Huez to be the exact order of the final classification of the Tour de France last year now, as again Armstrong just continues to race up and down the Alps in this marvellous crowd here, cheering him all of the way. Many of them listening to it on radio before he comes to them.
I wonder if those were the Dallas Cowboys out there on the slopes of Alpe d'Huez today, trying to encourage Lance Armstrong to victory. This man here is called the poursuivant, but he's not the chaser. He's the defeated on the slopes of the Alpe today. 41 seconds. His advantage is absolutely crumbling, but Ullrich is actually starting to slowly creep back towards the lead of Lance Armstrong. 1 minute and 40 seconds. Number 1 is the man's name coming over the race radio at the moment. 1 is the number of Lance Armstrong, the winner of last year. This man is going through all kinds of hell on his bike. He's led the race from the 6th kilometer. He thought and dreamed that he could win, but today he will not.
5 kilometers to the summit for Lance Armstrong now. He's got already 204 under those wheels today. We thought he looked shaky for most of them. He's proved us all absolutely wrong. He was waiting for the Alpe. And as you can see, there's an awful lot of Americans here who've come to watch the attack of Lance Armstrong today. Before we came onto the air, they said, who do you think's going to win? And I have to confess, we said Armstrong. But we sort of lost faith in ourselves halfway through.
Well, he certainly was suffering over those early climbs, but he is not suffering at all right now. His shoulders much higher up than they were in the first climb of the day. His pedaling cadence is still absolutely perfect. It's like a metronome. It's ticking by every second that he wants it to. He set his pace here at around about 95 RPM. Virage numero 5, the 5th corner to the summit, but the next corners are very long ones, very long apart. Difficult climb here for this man, Laurent Roux. He's suffering. He's just trying to stay at the front of the bike race. This is a day he will remember for many days to come. At the moment, he's being breathed down his neck by Jan Ullrich and that very select group of Belocchi, Moreau, and I think Roberto Laiseca has just been left behind.
51 seconds, Ullrich is coming up behind him. He's going to hang on to a high finish anyway, because the riders who are coming up are also being dropped by the groups in turn. There's only 3 of them now and making the return. I think Sevilla's got back on. Yes, he has. So there are 4 riders now coming up behind Laurent Roux, but there's no doubt who's going to win the stage, and it's going to be Lance Armstrong.
So the agony of Ulrich continues as Jan Ulrich can only pedal along and wonder how far ahead this man is. Arguably the finest endurance athlete in the world, and you are watching him live. It's been a bitter day on the Tour de France for these men, particularly that man in white up front, Jan Ulrich, who thought he had this man, Lance Armstrong, right where he wanted him. As it turned out, he did not. Armstrong has judged his pace perfectly and swept to the lead on stage 10. Here's Phil and Paul.
These are scenes on Alpe d'Huez. Now we've entered the barrier section here, just under 4 kilometers to the summit. This is the area where Fabio Parra was once in serious trouble from the crowd, and so since then they've barriered the road off. But it takes away a little bit of the atmosphere, but at least it makes for a safe arrival of the American champion today. Lance Armstrong destroying the Tour de France on the first day in the mountains, as he did a year ago. He is still accelerating here, and still in second place just is Laurent Roux. Now he may well just hang on, even if I don't really think so.
I don't think he will. I think he may find himself getting caught there. He's only got 30 seconds advantage over Jan Ulrich's group right now, and Ulrich is pegging him back very slowly but surely. But Ulrich is having a very difficult time. The Ulrich group now is down to 3 men, Joseba Bellocchi and Christophe Moreau. The distance between Roux and Jan Ulrich is 20 seconds. We're getting there. And the GC, well, it's going to be a very strange day, because I think we will still find at the top of the leaderboard a fairly unknown name amongst the favourites, and it should really be Francois Simon, because he started the day almost half an hour ahead of Lance Armstrong. It could well be Kovalev will be second, but the way the race is unfolding just now, Armstrong will have climbed himself probably back up into third place at the end of the day.
Well, at the moment, Kovalev is riding just over 3 minutes behind Armstrong on the road. And I would suspect he'd be 4 down by the time he gets to the line.
Kovalev is going to be a very difficult man to get rid of. He started the day around about 14 minutes ahead of Lance Armstrong, but I'm sure by the time we get up to Paris, that will have been reversed to probably a 14-minute deficit for Kovalev. This man now in the silent part of the Alpe d'Huez right now. The barriers are up alongside him. He can ride safely up towards the finishing line, and he's now just hoping to conserve as much of his advantage over Jan Ulrich as possible. That advantage over Jan Ulrich right now is 1 minute and 50 seconds, and if he were to look to his right down the valley, he would see riders spread over probably 40 minutes tonight. This man has done the damage, and he'll say a big thank you to Team Telecom, who I think have blown their tactics and set up a great ride for Armstrong. Moreau now cracks. The Frenchman who won the prologue is off the back. He cannot follow the pace of Ulrich.
Ulrich is going to be number 2 again in the Tour, and he has no answer to the strength of Armstrong. He's now just going a little bit harder, and he's pulling away. They've gone past Jean de la Tour. There he is. The unlucky Laurent Roux has been passed, and so too Bellocchi has gone by him as well. But Bellocchi has now been dropped by Ulrich. Ulrich again at number 2 in the Tour. Never finished less than second. He's won it once. He is now going to be number 2 again. I can't see him matching Lance Armstrong, but there'll be a great time trial tomorrow.
There's going to be a big battle. This man is on the part of Alpe d'Huez which will suit him more than the early kilometres. The incline has slightly levelled off. He can use his big gear. He's a powerhouse, this man. It's like having a car with a V8 engine. He's a huge bike rider, Jan Ulrich. Armstrong always gives him the compliment of saying he is the most talented bike rider in the world. But this man is probably the bike rider in the world that works the hardest. He trains the hardest, prepares specifically for certain stages of the Tour de France. He takes a lot of time out of his year to come onto training camps and look at these mountains, tries himself out over the mountains. He's probably ridden Alpe d'Huez 6 times this year, and he's also been to look at the time trial stage tomorrow on a number of occasions. He knows what's in store for him. I love Jan is the writing on the road right now, but I think the Tour de France tonight is going to love Lance Armstrong, because he's putting it back into some kind of normality.
This is Jan Ulrich, and we are certain now, I think, to get the order of finish. Armstrong, Ulrich, Bellocchi, Moreau, and that was the result of the Tour de France last year. The same 4 men are going to go over the line in that order now, because Ulrich is clear. So Ulrich is chasing There is the man on the left, Lance Armstrong. It is 2 minutes, they're saying now, back to Jan Ullrich, second man on the road. That is a huge gain over this man on the Tour de France.
Look at the difference in the styles. Armstrong, the very fast pedaling cadence there, around about 95 rhythms per minute. He's up into the outskirts of the town of Alpe d'Huez right now. The road is perfectly clear. It's kept clean by all of the barriers. It's safe for Armstrong to ride into the town. I only hope that Eric, the photographer, doesn't come out and try and get a front head-on shot of Armstrong, as happened to Guerini a few years ago. Armstrong is totally concentrated right now. He's got that jaw set in motion. He's looking for the victory. He won't even smile till he gets to the last kilometre, but you can see now, Phil, that jersey is absolutely drenched in sweat. 3 and a bit kilometres to go for Jan Ullrich. Completely different style in the action of this man. He's climbing on sheer power right now. He's mustering all the power that he can to keep a huge gear ticking over.
But the Alpe is almost behind him. The roads level a little bit very soon. He'll move up the gears and he will fly across the town itself and then make the left turn up to the line, which itself returns to an uphill finish. But it's all over now. He's broken the spirit of the stars of the Tour. Now he's got to set about the long job of healing the damage done by that 30-minute breakaway the other day and pick off the lesser riders. It'll be a few days yet before he gets yellow.
It'll be a few days. It'll be a long battle. This is going to be a very difficult week for all of these riders in the Tour de France, because apart from the rest day, when the riders travel down from the Alps straight down to the Pyrenees, it will be always in the mountains, uphill, and that is going to be a lot of concentrated climbing, and that is something now must be going right through the mind of Jan Ullrich. Armstrong getting closer to the finish. He now is looking at seeing the next barrier on the road. That will tell him he is 2 kilometres away from the finishing line, and very shortly he will come into the town square of Alpe d'Huez. He'll ride across the square. He will take the left-hand bend, which every bike rider in the world knows. We've seen it so many times on television before, and any of the ex-bike riders out there who've seen this know just exactly what it's like to go into that corner. It might look fairly flat, but I tell you what, it hurts after a long day in the saddle.
So as we go past the point where it was Eric, the famous photographer from France, who felled the Guerini, the man that won the stage here when we last visited it 2 years ago, that's gone safely by now. We're now waiting for Armstrong to conquer the Alpe, and the last American to win here was Andy Hampsten, and he was on the Motorola team.
They were teammates at the time, and that was a great Tour de France for Andy Hampsten. He'd hoped that he would go on to win the Tour de France. He was always regarded as a hopeful. He actually finished 4th overall in that year's Tour, but I think as a great climber, he will have been happy to have taken out the Alpe d'Huez. At the moment, it looks very much as if that honour is going to go to Lance Armstrong. The only difference is that Lance Armstrong is probably going to go on to win the Tour de France, and that's only been done once before, back in 1952, by Il Campionissimo himself, Fausto Coppi. This man, Phil, is totally programmed right now. He's ticking away every metre, just waiting to get himself closer to the finish. He wants to do huge damage in the Tour de France. He knows he has to. He has to pull back 31 minutes and 30 seconds on Francois Simon. I'm absolutely certain he will do that. He needs to pull back 14 minutes on Andrei Kivilev, and he will do that by the end of this week if he keeps putting in performances like this.
Well, by tomorrow, Kivilev will be about 9 minutes ahead of him in the overall, and probably in second place in the race. But remember that last year, in both time trials, Kivilev conceded 3.5 minutes. There's another 7 for us to look for. And, of course, the Pyrenees and tomorrow's time trial are still to come. Armstrong on course to climb from the depths of the Tour de France and win it again for the 3rd time. This is Yoshiba Bolocki, a show of defiance here by the rider who finished 3rd overall last year. He's still got Ullrich in his sights. I don't think he'll catch him as we go further up the road by 2 minutes now to Lance Armstrong. Under the kilometre to go. Just this splendid journey across the town where the crowd will just get a glimpse of this great rider and then cheer him home to the finish. Then the clock starts. Then Lance will know what he's gained today.
Well, if you stop the race right now, it'll be 1 minute and 55 seconds over Jan Ullrich, but Yoshiba Bolocki is doing a magnificent comeback onto the wheel of the German. This man's style, Phil, from the bottom of this climb has not changed one iota. He's now getting into the big gears. It's the flatter part of the climb. Look at that. He's on the big chain ring right now. That will have 53 teeth on it, and he's putting the power in. He wants to open up as much time as he can over Ulrich. This is the Lance Armstrong we've seen in the past at Sestriere and at Hautecam. He's putting the pressure in, keeping the gap all of the time, around about 2 minutes over his big challenger. And this is the speed. This is unbelievable. He's on the town square right now. He can breathe for a few moments as he negotiates this roundabout, and in a few moments' time he will take a left-hand turn and face the final 400 meters. Look at his face. He wants this win. He dreamed about this win. He will now go up alongside the greats, and he's certainly setting himself up for a third win at the Tour.
He is about to win his 8th stage at the Tour de France since he won at Verdun back in 1993. This will be the greatest win because it's Alpe d'Huez, the mecca of world cycling. That's the bend that Greg LeMond once almost overshot as he was riding to win the Tour de France. Now are we seeing the foundations of the man who will win the Tour for the 3rd time in Paris? Lance Armstrong will probably say, yes, you are. 6 hours and 23 minutes. He had to bridge a 6-minute gap to win the stage. He has given us a tremendous demonstration. Yes, that's the one I wanted, and I've got it.
That was a mean victory salute. He certainly wanted that win. He wanted to come out and put out all of the riders in this Tour de France d'accord, as they say in France. He wanted them to understand he's the top man. He's the strongest bike rider in this Tour. Jan Ullrich, 1 kilometre to go for him, has learned a very serious lesson today, that Armstrong is the top man in the mountains. If he wants to beat him, he's going to have to outfox him on the plains.
And we're looking at Jan here, who has really suffered here just to limit his losses. They are going to be considerable. It was 2 minutes and 2 seconds at the last time check, and I think he will continue to lose all the way to the line. Ulrich is going to take 2nd place to Lance and wonder what he's got to do tomorrow, because the time trial, it's only a short one, but it's all uphill tomorrow. After we make the rather flat start down at Grenoble, we climb to Chamrus, and here he comes now, Jan Ullrich, a former winner of the Tour de France, still in a great shape. Even so, he's tried today to use his team to beat Armstrong, and instead Armstrong used Ulrich's team to beat Ulrich.
It's absolutely unbelievable. A couple of years ago, when we saw this man win his first Tour de France, we said we won't see another winner of the Tour de France. He will dominate the sport of cycling for the next 5 years. But stardom has been a very serious problem for him, and he's had serious problem with his weight and keeping on form throughout the winter season. And now we're looking at a man fighting to stay in contention at the Tour de France. He's a huge powerhouse. He's absolutely the most talented bike rider on the circuit, but he will fight back. He will still try and win the Tour de France. But today, psychologically, he's been slapped in the face by Armstrong, because his team Telecom was the one that toughened up the race. He's losing serious time. It's going to be around about 2 minutes on the line as you look at the average speed, Phil, inside 18 miles an hour for the whole day. He's digging deep. He won't give up until the line.
So Ulrich's face, a picture of pain, hits the line there about 1:58. He closed slightly at the end, but it's hurt him badly. Balocchi, 3rd in the Tour de France last year, 3rd over the line again. He is coming now, just over 2 minutes gained by Armstrong. Looking down the road, Christophe Moreau, 4th in the Tour de France last year, 4th here at Alpe d'Huez. This is an amazing omen, I think, for Lance Armstrong, as Christophe Moreau, the first leader of this year's Tour, his face looking pretty calm. I think he's conceded halfway up the climb today. 2.5 minutes down today on Armstrong. Now, and Oscar Sevilla is coming up, so he also has got by the Jean de la Tour rider Laurent Roux. This has been a fine ride by the Kelme boy.
Well, the Kelme boys, this is their hometown. This is their way, the place where they really love to excel. He's had a hard time today reveling in these mountains because all of that has been done by Lance Armstrong. He's going to concede big time. 2 minutes 54 seconds for Oscar Sevilla. He will probably be the best placed rider from the Kelme squad in his first ever attempt at the Tour de France.
Fabulous riding, and this I think might be Kivilev, or it could be Cuesta down there at the moment as they're heading up towards the line. It is still not finished yet for many of them.